listening to the Discovery Pod, a podcast dedicated to conversations with leaders in the social profit sector. Discover the origin stories of CEOs, founders, and other senior leaders and learn from them so you can accomplish what is most important. Now, on with the show with your host, Douglas Nelson.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Discovery Pod, conversations with social profit leaders. There's a small group of social profit CEOs that have started their positions in 2020 and have taken on their leadership roles at a particularly difficult time for our world, our country, our families, and for our sector. Our guest today is one of that select group of leaders assuming his role in this time of uncertainty. Mark Gifford is the new CEO of the Real Estate Foundation of British Columbia, and we're really pleased to have him as our guest on the podcast today. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So a lot of CEOs start with their 90 to 100-day plans, and we have lots of conversations with folks about making that really a successful launch into their new job. How have you approached your launch when we've got this very different way of doing business?
Sure. Well, yes, there's some circumstances that asked us to adapt a little bit in terms of a typical plan, but I'm really fortunate to be able to start it at the Real Estate Foundation at this point in time. I think it's a foundation that's got great bones. It's had tremendous leadership from Jack Wong over the last 10 years and a board that's really committed to its mission and mandate and a phenomenal group of staff. And that has just been a real joy to walk into despite the challenges. And so it's made for an interesting start, especially when sort of the three variables that drive your budget and ability to pay bills and make grants, which are interest rates, investment returns, and home sales in a minor state of flux. But it's also created a great window for learning, both from staff, from board, and from our stakeholders. It really brings into focus what's important, both in terms of supporting a team and their capacity, and what's important in terms of our purpose and who we're in service to. So in some ways, it's a blessing in disguise.
You really get to understand the core of the organization because the urgency of the day-to-day is somewhat on pause.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Well, for those of our listeners that don't know the work of the Real Estate Foundation, could you tell us a little bit about it and how familiar you were with its work when you started the process to become the new CEO?
Sure. Well, the Real Estate Foundation, our vision is a healthy environment and thriving, resilient, livable communities, which is both a humble ask in our current state of the world, an audacious goal. I mean, we work to fund projects, connect people, and really share knowledge that advances sustainable land use and real estate practices across BC. I became familiar with the Real Estate Foundation during my time at Vancouver Foundation, where I had the opportunity to work for a number of years and got to do a lot of great partnership work with the Real Estate Foundation at that point, particularly around advancing environmental and sustainability efforts across the province. And so it was a bit of a return when the opportunity presented itself. It just wasn't something I wanted to let pass by, really a chance to influence systems in this province that really are at the crux of us, I think, meeting some of the biggest challenges we have in front of us. So that's part of my excitement for being here. I think land use and real estate practices are at the heart of some of the biggest challenges and opportunities facing people in our province.
I think that's a great point and a really interesting perspective. One of the things that I was really interested in, I hope we'll get to spend some time on, and the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast was I thought it was pretty unique for the Real Estate Foundation of BC to put someone in the CEO role who was so deeply rooted in community. You mentioned your time at the Vancouver Foundation. After that, you were responsible for a neighborhood house in the Lower Mainland. How does that connection to community, how will that connection to community reflect itself in the work you do at the Real Estate Foundation?
Well, I hope it reflects itself a lot. I think that advancing land use and sustainable real estate practices really needs to put people in community at the center. I mean, how thriving, sustainable, and resilient is a community or a natural environment if it doesn't address inequality and a changing climate, which are the kinds of questions we would grapple with in neighborhoods and in community, as well as through work at a community-focused funder like Vancouver Foundation. So how do we support people kind of rise up to meet challenges and stay connected and hopeful in the communities and lands that they love through our relationship with land and real estate practices?
in your work and in your career, a lot of what you've done has been about building partnerships or collaborations across organizations and across communities. How important do you think that's going to be, not only for Real Estate Foundation, but for that building the healthier community as we come through this pandemic and come out the other side?
Well, I think sort of working in partnership and in a spirit of collaboration, it's just the importance of that has been underlined at this point in time. But it's fundamental to our ability to get any work done to advance our mission. None of us are in this work alone. We can all find ways and roles we can play, but they're not in concert with the efforts of others around us and how we're both supporting people and organizations in that work. We're not going to get too far.
Right. And what advice would you have to people who are leading individual organizations that are trying to be a part of that change, being a part of that support for the community right now, or what it's going to look like a few months from now?
Well, I think a lot of through this transition, it's been hard not to have my head and my heart in the work of community-based organizations, and especially the one that I left. Where you've got deep relationships with people and both on staff and in community. And you often feel that the change that is occurring is largely out of your hands. I think for leaders in community, the leaders that have stood out for me in community are those who are creating space for their staff and volunteers to help inform the direction of the organization, where their teams have considerable voice in helping the organization adapt, where their communities can recognize their attempts to stay relevant and in service to the fulfillment of their mission despite the challenges, and to stay connected and sort of trying to be tuned in to the world around them.
At this time, they're in those community-based organizations, and even you work at the Real Estate Foundation, there are so many balls flying at leaders of these organizations, so many things that need to be kept going, so many new questions, new issues that are arising on a daily or hourly basis. How do you think leaders can focus on or determine what is the most important thing to be spending their time on or to be putting their energy into at any given point?
Well, I think one is that those leaders need to do their best to take care of themselves in terms of being, that's going to sound wrong. I think, so one of the most important pieces is taking time to ensure that staff are well taken care of. I think one of the pressure points that people are feeling right now is really how to sustain their teams, their organizations, but really the health and well-being of the people that have been doing this work are often have a fair amount of precariousness connected to their work.
Right.
That's who we're leaning on as communities right now. Folks who are on the front lines that aren't particularly well paid, are being asked to take on significant risks to their health and well-being, are witnessing significant amounts of trauma in community at the best of times, and now being asked to do that in this context. Very challenging to help staff feel well and feel connected and safe and confident that we're going to be able to move through this period, but we won't be able to do that if people aren't healthy and well. And right. So I think that's being tuned into that. I think for leaders, we get caught up, or organizational leaders, we get caught up in some of the, in the funding pieces, obviously, like our financial resilience and our relationships with partners. But I also think it's important for us to be self-aware about the privilege that we carry, both as individuals and then just sort of relational privilege in our organizations, where we tend to forget about that when we get caught up in the day-to-day of navigating navigating our organization through crisis. Everybody around us doesn't have the same level of security or the same feel for where we're going as an organization or as a community, and that's wearing on people, especially those that have had, put their heart and soul into the work for a lifetime often.
Right.
So I think this pandemic, we talk a lot about us all being in this together, and we are, but we all are experiencing it very differently. And I think that's important to remember. So both as organizations, so me making the jump from a community organization and leadership there to a foundation, very different kind of leadership picture in community, and certainly challenging for those who remain at Kawasa providing leadership in my case, and then personal privilege. I'm a middle-aged white dude that speaks English and has a home and all the relationships that I need, and I can and I'm okay. So it's disruptive and it's awkward, but I'll be fine. That is not the case facing so many people in our community and so many organizations that are trying to serve them. And I think being aware, whether you're a foundation leader or a nonprofit leader, that both as organizations we're experiencing this differently, but certainly as people, it's a very different experience.
I think that's really an important point you've made there. And I wonder how that applies now in your current role. You're replacing a long-serving CEO who'd been there, Jack Wong, who'd been there for 10 years and very well respected, coming in brand new, in effect, to the organization. How are you providing that support to the team as that new leader? These are people that you probably don't know very well that you're needing to offer these supports to. What's your approach been?
Well, I just tell them I've got all the answers, and
people love that.
I raise my voice. We have, we have screaming Zoom meetings. No, I think it's listening to that staff. I mean, I've been so impressed with the ability of the staff team that I have to adapt and make adjustments and be patient with me, and then with my board and their willingness to recognize that things are going to be a bit fluid, and best laid plans in February are going to need to adjust as we go through this immediate period, but probably our medium term work too. But helping people keep an eye on the ball, what we're trying to accomplish, how we best serve our mission, and how we begin to adapt, not just to the challenges of this particular time we're in, but the longer range ones that really kind of drew me to the foundation, and why I think its mandate is just so relevant to our future as a province. I think recognizing the pandemic in some ways provides a bit of a vignette for us in terms of just underscoring how important inequality and climate change are as threats to our vision of sustainability for this province, and underscore how we need to begin to be much more intentional about putting those at the forefront of our decision making and planning.
Well, earlier on, you mentioned the three levers of funding that you have at the Real Estate Foundation, and how all three of those are under immediate and direct threat as a result of the health and economic climate. How has that changed the conversations you're having with your board chair or with your board in general?
Well, it's made for more frequent conversations, I think.
People are paying close attention.
Yeah, we're paying quite close attention. I mean, it's been good for both staff and board to be tuned into. There is so much volatility right now that it's kind of hard to get a straight bearing on where we're going to be in 2 months, in 3 months in terms of the external picture. But we've got, I think we've taken a very thoughtful approach to how we're moving forward. The organization is in great shape from a system standpoint. So the market is what the market is, an investment side. And we've got a phenomenal investment committee that helps put shape to the work we do there. We're not an endowed funder. Some folks don't realize that. So unlike Vancouver Foundation or many other foundations, we don't work from an endowment. We really work to get money out the door. So we have kind of a 2-year grant stabilization fund that is a rolling average that sees us move money in and out the door over that period of time. So we will see more volatility than other funders in terms of what we're able to disperse in any given year. And this will be one of those years. So we're doing our best to maximize how much we can support in community without jeopardizing the health of the organization.
I think that's a really common issue across the sector that funders are having, that they see this as a time when there is greater need than ever before, perhaps. And there's a lot of social pressure and real genuine intention to get as much money into the hands of the organizations and the people that are doing the great work of the sector. How have your conversations, and it's early days, I appreciate, but how have your conversations with the organizations you fund gone? Are they looking for the foundation to step up, or are they understanding of the position that you're in?
They've actually the response has been great. I mean, we've been really proud of the work of the team for putting as much emphasis as we can on strengthening communications with our grantees, adapting what we do, like creating as much flexibility in the kinds of support we provide at this time. So examples of that include everything from relaxing reporting requirements or to helping organizations shift from project-based funding to general support so that they can have the flexibility to respond right now, to paying funding out early. Everything we can do with current grantees, listening to them to see what issues that they're identifying, trying to bring that into our thinking in terms of what we might be able to offer short, medium, and long term. So lots of good work there and lots of great positive feedback from the organizations we support, most of which aren't, frontline organizations. And, we're working primarily with organizations that are focused on longer term sustainability concerns and the health of our environment. And those organizations, they tend to rely more heavily on philanthropy and foundation support than government funding. And so though they're not on the front lines operationally and organizationally, they're facing some real pressure looking ahead in terms of how's this going to land for us in 6 to 9 months. And so they're also going through a period where they're asking a lot of questions of themselves and their future and how to adapt and respond without kind of dropping the ball on their mission.
How frequently do you find yourself relying on your experience from your years at the Community Foundation in those conversations?
I think it's just there, right? There's certainly my time at Vancouver Foundation and the Philadelphia Foundation before that's really been important in informing both my learning and how I work in community and with partners. And so I think I'm drawing on that every day and looking for ways to bring some of the insights that came through that work experience into the work that I'm doing with my team at the Real Estate Foundation.
You're coming into this role at a very sobering time for everyone. Before we knew about COVID, before the pandemic was a real thing, you were getting ready to start this. What was really exciting to you, or what was one thing in particular that you were looking forward to jumping into as you became the CEO?
Well, I was very excited about the mandate. I think I love working in community. The kind of the intimacy of work at a neighborhood scale is beautiful. But I did miss an opportunity to take a big picture approach, sort of see work across a province, and ask, how do we help create the conditions to ensure that communities are thriving, sustainable, and resilient, and work with a great team to do that. As I've mentioned previously, I really do think that land use and real estate practices are at the heart of the biggest challenges and opportunities facing our province, whether that's in terms of inequality and climate or changing demographics, the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians, how all of those have land use and real estate practices at the heart of them. And there isn't another funder in the province with a mandate to be really focused on that work and how we create public good out of real estate or public benefit that's of service to helping this province meet some of those challenges and opportunities. That's exciting to me.
Those are huge challenges in their own right without the overlay of COVID-19. I wonder, you've mentioned public benefit a few times through our conversation, and I think that's really important to keep in mind, not only given your role, but just in general in the sector. Do you think the definition or understanding of social benefit is going to change as a result of what we're going through right now?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I haven't thought about that in terms of how we think about it. What I would be hopeful for is that our notions of public benefit and social benefit come more to the forefront in decision-making, both public sector and private sector. Certainly that's been at the forefront, I think, for social profit leaders in charities and nonprofits around the province. But just the importance of that conversation with public sector and private sector partners in order to ensure all of our long-term viability.
I think one of the encouraging things that I've seen in the sector over the last month or so has been the number of really unique collaborations, whether it's all the hospital foundations in the Toronto area coming together, or the partnership between United Way, the Lower Mainland, Vancouver Foundation, Van City, and the City of Vancouver. Bringing together partnerships that in another time may take months or years to pull together if it ever happened, but they're coming together really quickly to respond to this crisis. And I think that my hope is that that feeling of urgency, that the need to respond and support community is more important than the traditional barriers that get in the way of organizational collaboration. That urgency is what we take forward, and we're able to continue to get things done that may have been more difficult in earlier times, and put that public benefit right at the front of what organizations are doing in collaboration, in partnership across sectors.
Absolutely.
The Real Estate Foundation of BC has a very special place in my heart, because when I was a very junior fundraiser at what's now the Sauder School of Business, but it wasn't named at the time at the University of British Columbia, the Real Estate Foundation of British Columbia was one of the first really significant gifts as a fundraiser I got to be a part of, establishing a professorship. And it was years ago, Stan Hamilton, who was the Senior Associate Dean of the Business School, working with the Real Estate Foundation to come up with this. And I remember filling out forms and going to several committee meetings to get that approved. But when that gift came through, it was really a special one for the university, but for me as a junior fundraiser to be a part of. So
that's great. So in some ways, the Real Estate Foundation can be credited for this podcast.
It's not a direct line. It's not a direct line, but it is there.
It's a pretty wobbly line, but sure. No. That's a great story. We've had fabulous relationships with our universities across the province too. That being an example of one, and these sort of long-term relationships with organizations that have really informed the organization's ways of knowing as well as what we do. So that's a nice story, and I've heard lots of those connections to the work that the foundation does.
Well, they are very fortunate to have you in the chair through this difficult time, and I know all of us and you are looking forward to more regular business as usual in order to get after all that important work that you've described today.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being on the Discovery Pod.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Discovery Pod. Be sure to tune in next week for another inspiring and informative conversation. Don't forget to visit our website, thediscoverygroup.ca, for more resources. If you like what you just listened to, please subscribe and tell a friend about it. Until next time, keep working to make your organization exceptional.